Poggers? Okay, transitioning. Ooh, yes! Welcome to Enter the Zeitgeist podcast, episode 12 with Alex Pickett. If you notice, we now have a new cool layout for our stream. Very minimal still, but I'm pretty pumped about it. So Yep, for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, I'm John. This beautiful man next to me is Pablo. He's my co-host. And then this beautiful man below us is Alex Pickett. And he's a friend of Pablo and I's. He's actually an EMT. So hopefully he has some good insight on some COVID madness. You caught COVID earlier on, right? Oh, okay. Okay, I guess you were just quarantining. Oh my gosh. Oh, well, you can't hear Alex? You can't hear Pop? Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to restart the stream. We're gonna have to redo everything. Okay. I sent the link. What the okay, speak, guys. Oh my god, this is a tragedy. I renamed it. One moment. I don't know why they're not showing up. I might have to switch back to my old headphones. This is, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Can they, oh! Can you hear Pablo and Alex now? Can you guys make a noise?
Hello.
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 Perfect. This is what we really need for the chat. Yeah, I see that my audio is actually coming through now, so it makes sense. Okay, make more noise, please.
Ah.
Are we sure that we can't? Are we sure you guys can't hear them?
Oh yeah. Right.
The problem with live.
Well, we have live testing too. Duncan's doing it for us for free.
Yeah, well, Duncan. yeah. What a boss. If you guys are interested in Duncan.
Hey, wait. Be silent for a second.
Yes.
I'm watching the stream. I'm gonna see if I can hear us. I can hear Pablo.
Okay, yeah, that's good. If you can hear Pablo, we're good. All right. One moment. I also realized. Do you see the sample goal, or do you see "Be Our Friend" on the stream?
I see sample goal.
What the fuck? I'm banned from Twitch.
My sample goal.
Yeah, that's not. It's supposed to say "Be Our Friend."
Yeah, we're building the ship as we're flying it.
What the heck? Yeah, we're gonna get rid of that for now. That's gone. We're done. Goodbye. It's gone. Okay. Now, I think I already introduced Pablo and Alex, but let's redo that. Welcome to the show, Alex. You're Into the Zeitgeist, episode 12. I'm going to rename the episode right now, because apparently I didn't save my rename because I'm bad at streaming.
You can just overwrite Chris's episode, you know. But I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So, Alex is a great friend, EMT. He was talking about COVID in nursing homes. And then I responded, you already had COVID before. This is an awkward way to start the podcast. But okay. But yeah, Alex, so you said you thought you've almost had it. You quarantined a few times, right?
There were a couple times, like, before my company had, especially in the beginning, where we didn't have as stringent, like, body protection for COVID. And I don't know if it was just, like, stress or allergies, but I felt, like, kind of sick the next day, and, you know, paranoia gets to you. And that was also back in the day before rapid COVID test, where I had to, like, wait sometimes a week for results. I'm like, well, I just have to quarantine until then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense as well, because just like the, oh my gosh, Paulo, what are you doing?
I'm adjusting things subtly, but now it's very obvious.
But like in those days, like COVID was, like the first 2 months of the pandemic, no one even knew what was going on. Everyone panicked and bought toilet paper, and they thought that they were going to die of hunger or be shot going to the grocery store because they got the last like package of TP. I feel like it makes sense to be like extra careful earlier on.
Well, kind of unrelated, but pretty related. I had a surreal experience. So, just a few moments ago, I messed up my sleep schedule recently. I don't know how, because I work night shift, but somehow my sleep's like, oh, you need to go to bed at 8 and wake up at 3 a.m. So I went to the store to get an energy drink, and I pulled out my mask, and it ripped. So I'm like, well, either I can, like, go on the podcast groggy and go to sleep, or I can, you know, just pretend I'm in East Tennessee and I'm vaccinated.
It's not ripped.
I could just walk in there and confidence trick it, and, you know, the cashier's not wearing a mask anyway, but the people in line were, and that's the first time I've been in a store without a mask in over a year.
Yeah, you just go in and you're like, yeah, I'm a Republican, what of it?
Yeah, not how it was.
Like, I felt so bad just, like, looking around, like, oh, it's okay, I won't look at you, I can't spread germs to you.
That's...
Just pull out, I have my vaccine record in my wallet, just, like, pull it out and show it to people, like, it's okay.
Here's my badge!
Yeah, it's really weird, because in Denver, that's the exact same way, it's like, you better be wearing a mask, sir, which I'm glad, good thing. But when I went to Georgia for a few days, I was, like, the only person in St. Simon, Georgia that was wearing a mask, period. Like, I'd go into sandwich shops, not a single mask to be seen. On the staff, on the customers, nothing. Like, no one comes in with a mask and orders and go sits down and eat. They just walk in maskless. Very different. And I feel like it would be more like, I feel like is that not the case in Tennessee right now?
I mean, it depends. Like, in a place like Oak Ridge, yeah, but, like, when I'm on the job in Knoxville in my uniform and a mask, pretty much the only other people in the store wearing a mask are the employees most of the time.
Yeah. So how has being an EMT been during COVID? Less calls, more calls? I guess probably at this point it's normalized.
Well, yes and no, because, well, first of all, I should clarify, I don't work for an emergency service because I would, but it pays less, like, so why would I? You know, so our appointments consist, before COVID and still today, consist of doctor's appointments, dialysis appointments, and discharges from hospitals to residences. So doctor's appointments pretty much went away, and that's a good chunk of the business. So, and COVID calls didn't add that much, so for a while it slowed down, and my bosses were just like calling people in before their shifts ended, like, yo, you need to clock out. But now it's picked up again, and a lot of people have left, so it can be really hectic. Though I'm on nights, so it's not as bad.
Yeah, but then you're like, I know that we're always playing Discord stuff, and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't play. I'm at work.
Yeah, I mean, working nights has an advantage is like I get a $3 shift differential, and
Oh,
I
that's
don't
big.
run as yeah, I don't run as many calls as I did on days, but at the same time, it's hard doing normal people stuff. Like I got in a car crash a few weeks ago, and I'm like, well, I have to get up at I have to force myself to get up at normal people hours so I can deal with all this shit with
I guess that's true.
insurance and getting a new car.
But you also have, if you never need to do stuff, you don't have to you don't have to ask off work to go do like stuff during regular business hours. Like if I want
That
to
is
go,
true.
if
Yeah.
I want to go to get a doctor's appointment, I have to take off work to go to the doctor. Um, Usually, or like the dentist.
Yeah, recently, one of the past few days, my boss is like trying to redo the schedules for the whole company, and one of the shifts that's on there is you work 7 days straight for 12 hours, then you have 7 days off. I'm like, I can see the perks and disadvantages to that, but like, maybe if I worked an office job, I could do that, but with my job, it's like, no, I come home exhausted from a shift. I need at least like, I can't work more than like 3 or 4 shifts in a row, you know?
Yeah, that seems like a lot to do.
Especially since the shifts are 12 hours long. Well, now they're going to be 14.
And it would take like 4 days just to recover from those 7 days of work. You really only get like 3 days off, if that, to just recover your body.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm getting more overtime do it because they split the 7 days up in the middle of the pay period, so it's not like you're getting more overtime either.
Oh yeah, that's unfortunate. Like my job, I've been working a lot of overtime lately. Like in the past 2 weeks, I think I've gotten like 30 hours of overtime. Kind of unfortunate because I worked on Saturday and Sunday, at least a little bit. You gonna take that from Chris, Alex? Welcome
What
to,
is he saying?
for all those who are participating in the chat.
I
Probably
don't see
Duncan
any,
and
I don't
Chris,
see any money next to that comment. so I
friends of
can't
the show.
respond to it.
Thank you for commenting. Look, we're not money grubbers over here. We'll answer whoever
I
decides to
am.
talk to us.
But how is people's thinking like evolved over time? Is it just like the same constant like level of denial when it comes to COVID, or is it like some adjustment has occurred as it's gone on?
So, I work with fellow EMTs. You think they're medical professionals? They're trained, right? But like, the Republican brainwashing that goes into Tennessee is next level. Like, there's a paramedic that works with us, and she's an anti-vaxxer. I'm like, you figure those things to be incompatible, but they're not. And there's other people who are like, yeah, I'll wear my mask for my job, but you know, I don't believe in it outside of that. It's still a liberal conspiracy.
It's only not a liberal conspiracy if your boss is telling you to do it. Like, oh man.
People still don't see the irony of it. They're like, masks are anti-freedom, but like before COVID, if you like tried wearing a mask in some places, they'd be like, take that off.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like a privacy issue, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's like I was actually watching some like random video and someone was getting robbed and like you knew you were getting robbed as soon as someone walked in the door because they would be wearing a mask. And now it's just like standard operating day-to-day procedure. Because people are supposed to be wearing masks.
I think it's kind of good though for like privacy things. Like there's so much stuff about like facial recognition and stuff like that. Like you would think that a lot of like the libertarian like privacy advocate people would be like, you know what? It's actually kind of good that wearing masks is normalized because then you don't have all like the stuff that could potentially track you. But no, doesn't seem to be the case.
I don't know if I really care about the privacy aspect for at least for my life. Like I don't really think that anything's going to come up like going into like a gas station. But I mean, maybe I can see where that might be like useful for some situations. But I definitely think that if I'm going, I might continue to wear it in the store when I go grocery shopping, even.
Well, I
just
can
'cause it's
usually
clean.
consider it to be important when it comes to things like protests. Hold on a second.
Yeah, Pablo's having some life difficulties, but I don't
Is
know.
it life or dog difficulties?
Probably the dog, but yeah, wearing a mask in the grocery store, I feel like, hey, I haven't gotten sick at all, like 0 times this entire pandemic, which normally I would get like a sinus infection like 2 or 3 times a year, or maybe I'd catch like the common cold. but I've caught exactly 0 things. Your doorknobs do not work, Pablo.
They don't.
I really haven't. I mean, I used to get sick so much in high school, and it made me realize what a germ factory it was. After I left high school, I got sick maybe once or twice a year, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. I would always feel kind of sick if I ever, like, had to get near, like, the ground on the high school or something. It was just kind of gross. It was only cleaned a little bit. But, I mean, the same
How
thing...
many times do you have to get near the ground in high school?
I did a lot of dumb stuff. I would also say I'll probably keep wearing them on planes, even though it is really uncomfortable to wear a mask longer than, like,
I have not
3 hours.
flown since COVID. How is it?
So, I flew, like, earlier in COVID one time. I forget exactly where I was going. But, that time it was, like, very, like, they spaced me out. I was on, like, Delta. I don't think they space anyone out anymore. But I had, like, this entire row to myself, basically. And, it was a small plane, but it was pretty much the same, except for everyone had to wear a mask. But this was, like, in October. Maybe it was...
Did anyone try to resist the tyranny?
People were doing that. No one really on my plane. Actually, no, just kidding. There was a guy, he was wearing a bandana, which clearly those don't cover the bottom of your face, and, like, they're very thin material, so they don't really stop germs. So they're not approved by, like, the governing bodies. I forget what they're called for the airlines. Or I don't think the CDC recommends them either. But because of that, the flight attendant was like, hey, here's this real medical mask. Please put it on. And he was like, I'm wearing this. This works. And she's like, sorry, sir. You just got to put it on. Please, just do it. And then he didn't put it on for, like, another 3 minutes. And then she came back and he's like, you have to put that on right the fuck now. And then he put it on underneath his other mask. He, like, wrapped his bandana around it and then, like, put it on so he could feel cool about himself, I guess.
Oh my god.
I've had it happen to me at a hospital before where I walked in wearing an N95, so better than a surgical mask, and the hospital staff are like, you need to put this surgical mask on over that, and I'm like, really? I'm like, no, okay. It just looks ridiculous, but I'll do it.
I don't think it really matters. I will say it does make sense in some ways. Like, the bandana is probably more comfortable than, like, the surgical mask. I feel like the surgical mask digs into the back of my ears. But it just doesn't protect against things. It's not a thing.
I have a life hack for it, though. You can connect it to, like, the back of your ponytail if you grow one out, so then it doesn't put any pressure on your ears. You just tie it around there.
For me, the main problem is just fogging up my glasses. Like, I've had it happen where I'm like, I just have to take off my glasses when I'm doing something for a patient because I can't see what's going on. Because sometimes it happens, but yeah, it's just like getting the nose bridge right, I guess.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you tried the soap trick? If you get, like, a little thin film of soap, like, behind your glasses, that prevents them from fogging up. I would use that when I would work at restaurants and go in and out of the freezer.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that works for people who, like, wear goggles and stuff or masks. Like, if you're like swimming and you don't want your goggles to fog up while swimming, you can also use the soap.
I have had some people take masking a little too far, though. Like, my partner and I were picking up a psychiatric patient from the senior ward. Like, they have at a good percentage of hospitals, they have a senior behavioral center for, like, either, like, schizophrenic or really demented old patients. And we tried putting a mask on him. Of course, he ripped it off. So we're taking him out of the front of the hospital. And of course, it's not any like medical professional that works there. It's a lady in a pantsuit stops us and says, he needs a mask. And we try saying, well, he's a psychiatric patient. We tried putting one on, and he ripped it off. And then without a beat, this Karen just looks at us and goes, well, he needs a mask. And 1,000 thoughts raced through my head of what I'd say. I'm just like, okay, thank you, ma'am. And we just walked on the way.
Interesting. I feel like I mean, obviously you want to try as hard as you can in those scenarios, but that's one of the scenarios that you just kind of have to accept that this is how life is going to be. Like, you can't play by the rules every time without deviation. in a world
Yeah,
that's just like our world's not perfect, you know.
Yeah, that's when you have to rely on everybody around that person being safe so that they don't get it. Like for example, my mom, she was training to become like a psychiatric nurse practitioner, right? And so she would work like as a resident nurse or something like that. And she would take care of like these patients. Like one lady had a stroke, and so she's kind of like stuck in the mind of like a like younger like person, like an infant, but she's like in an adult body, and so she could not really keep the mask on her face, or just didn't understand. Um, and so she got COVID. My mom was like working around this person for just like a little bit, and so my mom had to quarantine because potentially like she could have gotten it from them. And I was like, I'm not really pissed at that person because you can't really put the blame on them. I'm pissed at the people around that person that they had the agency and things like that. Like I don't blame anybody for getting like COVID at their job that they have to be at to pay the bills. But when I see people outside who like have their parents pay for college, they don't have to work, they're just like at home every day, they have their parents pay their rent and so on, and they're going out just like living it up, partying, they have all the means to be responsible and they still don't do it. I'm pissed at those people.
So kind of related to that, a really scummy thing my company did related to COVID is back in March when they didn't know how serious that would be. Our vice president of operations, who works at the same building as us, pulled everyone who was on shift that day into for a little like family get meeting in the company lounge, and he's like, "Well, I know you're all worried about burning for your sick and vacation time on COVID, but I've talked to the CEO and don't worry about it. We don't have to go on workman's comp or anything. We'll just pay for your 2-week quarantine." And towards the beginning, they were paying for 2-week quarantine, but that was just a verbal agreement. We didn't get that in writing. Towards October or so, because this was in March when he said this, people started to get COVID, and that agreement was just kind of out the window. People would just burn through their second vacation time and be screwed for the rest of it.
Yeah, that's
Like,
messed up. Do you guys have like a union of some sort?
some places have unions, we do not. But the line they used is, well, how do we know you got it from work? It's like, I don't do anything. I don't go out besides going to work, you know? Like, I don't have much of a social life that's not online since COVID, but, you know, you can't, like, prove that, really.
Yeah, I feel like there's room for lawsuits here if people wanted to pursue them. But okay, I have a different mindset on this. I think yes, you need to be very careful and you need to be very responsible in what you're doing. But I don't think that you, like Pablo, I feel like you've lived like a very hermit-like life since COVID began, which is very admirable. But I don't think there's a problem with like. I think it's fine to go to restaurants. You just need to make sure that you're not like, but you don't become a super spreader.
Well, I'm
Like,
not talking about restaurants. Like the
Yeah.
times in which I got pissed and intervened was when people were just like throwing like block parties where there's so many people they
No,
can't
yeah,
even
yeah.
fit all in the house
Like
and
the
they're
one
spilling
at-
out onto the street.
Back to episode Into the Zeitgeist. I forget what episode it was on, but we talked about this where Pablo got like assaulted because he was confronting a block party. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's definitely not okay. I was also not okay with the wedding that I went to. It was way too lax in Georgia. But I came home and quarantined and did not see anyone at all after I got home until I got a test. So I think it's just up to society to be responsible enough to know, like, hey, I've been in a risky scenario. I should not be going anywhere. But the problem is people don't do that.
Yeah, like I've seen some articles online that talked about the way that COVID spread, and it was mostly going like through strands of just like one person infecting one person infecting one person because they're all
Yeah.
trying to be as careful as they can, and then it just hits one person like in that it explodes from there where like one person is just not being careful at all, and so it spreads like in that kind of manner. So I would think, oh, like I have to be ultimately responsible. So if I get it, I don't even get that one other person. Because the real problem is that it goes down the line with a bunch of dominoes and it hits a super spreader idiot. And so that's kind of like on me, right?
Yeah.
In a way. I had to swerve this one person because they were like, hey, like you want to go on a date or whatever? And I'm like, okay, sure. And she's like, I'm at this bar. And I look on Snapchat, it's hyper crowded. I ask, is it crowded? She's like, yeah, it's crowded, and I just fucking ghosted her. I'm done.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind is like COVID bubbles, I guess. Like, at least my friends in Denver, we've sort of like made COVID bubbles in a way. So pretty much we hang out with this group of people, and it's like, hey, if you've hung out with anyone other than this group of people, you need to let us know. And like, that way, and like everyone's trying to be safe on their own. But like some of our friends in Denver, like one friend just like randomly called us and was like in Texas for the weekend, and we're like, well, we're not seeing you for another 2 weeks or until you get tested. Like no warning, they just like spur of the moment flew to Texas. Probably
I will say
decision.
the one thing I've had on those anti-masking idiots that are like, do you even know anyone that's personally had COVID or died of it? I'm like, yes, and yes. Like, in December, we lost 3 of our dialysis patients to COVID, one of which I had to take home from UT on hospice. I had to rush that one because he didn't even have a day left, man. It was really sad. But yeah, it'll get really bad in nursing homes for a while because they would quarantine every patient that came in, regardless if they have that recently came in, regardless if they had COVID or not. So they would put these COVID negative patients in the same wing as the COVID positive patients, just asking for it to be spread.
Oh,
and second,
so they would quarantine them in the same wing?
Yeah, and second of all, it's not like these nursing homes have like isolated ventilation units either. So
yeah, it's not like a hospital, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, they could have. They had people scout out field hospitals, and they could have put them there until they got over it. But they're like, oh no, we'll just put them in a nursing home. But the best is there's a group of nursing homes called NHC, and they vary wildly based on what neighborhood they are. Like, there's 3 in Knoxville. 2 of them are absolute crap. But can you guess what part of Knoxville the really nice one's at?
Sequoia Hills, somewhere around there.
It's Farragut. NHC Farragut's the real nice one. All the other NHCs have COVID wards, but whenever someone at NHC Farragut gets it, they ship them off to another NHC. One of the poorer ones.
Man.
I mean, I guess from a logical sense, I feel like that makes a little sense, because then if you would like have one hospital that you deem the clean hospital, and then you still like, not that you're not cleaning the others, but
I mean, NHCs are nursing homes, but not
sorry, one nursing home that you deem like the clean nursing home that like no one's infected at, and if they are, you get rid of them and put them in another place.
But the clean nursing home happens to be the most expensive one.
Oh yeah, okay. That sucks. Yeah, they definitely shouldn't be like. That's a weird gray area. It's not like, it's definitely not morally in the right, but you can like argue that it makes some sort of sense. I don't know.
A little unrelated, but pre-pandemic, do you guys remember those commercials where it's like, are your people facing nursing home abuse? You might be looking at the stuff with rose-tinted glasses, like those commercials on TV. You guys remember those?
I
vaguely remember them, along with like the mesothelioma commercials, but like, I mostly don't watch TV or see ads that much.
Yeah, I've cut most ads out of my life, or in like around 2018 or so, because I don't have cable.
Yeah, and pretty much I have ad block, and anything I don't have ad block for, I have a paid subscription where I don't get ads on them.
Yeah, it just kind of makes me think that like before the pandemic, there was already kind of a problem with like supervision over how people were being treated at nursing homes. So it's like now with like the pandemic, there's like a lot more of a spotlight on that kind of thing.
Yes and no, because most nursing homes have completely shut out visitation. Besides, like, they'll occasionally wheel a resident to a window or something so their loved ones can talk to them. But other than that, you can't really see them.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a few nursing homes, like, there's one called Serene Manor in Knoxville, and just for context, everyone there's a ward of the state. Like, they don't pay to be there, but you walk in there and you think there's like a war going on you haven't heard about. It's like a World War I field hospital. There's like 5 patients a room. One of my colleagues told me she delivered a patient there, and she saw someone in scrubs, so she started to give a report to them, gave like the whole report, and then walked away. And then another person in scrubs walked up. It's like, hey, who'd you bring here? It's like, well, I just told her. Oh, she doesn't work here. That's just a patient. I'm like,
What?
what?
Weird. That might be a HIPAA
Putting patients in
violation.
scrubs. Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know why that's happening, but yeah, my grandmother, she's in a nursing home in North Carolina, and she's like 85, but like she really hates leaving her nursing home. Like she doesn't she like so like before the pandemic she would like stay there, but she might like come visit like my aunt and now my parents because they live in North Carolina now, just like a few days at a time and then like go back to the nursing home. But now anytime she leaves, she has to quarantine for 14 days when she comes back, which is good, but that also means that she is a 84, 85, doesn't have internet, and so basically all she can do is like watch cable TV for 14 days and not interact with anybody else in the nursing home.
I was gonna say, let me clarify something here that probably most people don't know. There are actually like 3 levels in nursing homes. There's what you could just call a nursing home, and that's basically just senior people living together, like minimal caretakers. That's like a senior living community. There's an assisted living facility where they'll bring you your meds for you to take them. They may like help you clean and bring you some meals. And then there's finally what we call a SNF, a skilled nursing facility, and that's where if like you're a person who like can't get out of bed or like basically you need people to do most everything for you. So like an assisted living facility, people can like walk outside and walk around, where the SNF, it's kind of like you're on lockdown all the time, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandmother's in like a regular nursing
sorry.
home.
I was gonna say assisted livings are generally much nicer than SNFs. There are very few SNFs that I would feel comfortable putting my grandparents in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandmother actually likes hers a lot because she just like will like go gossip with the other ladies and like eat food and stuff. And like she goes to 3 meals a day where she just like socializes and then she can like do whatever she wants, I guess. And then she would often kind of like go shopping and stuff because she like likes to do that, but she can't do any of that because if she leaves the facility, she has to quarantine in her room for 14 days. So she doesn't even really want to go see her daughters, my mom and my aunt, because it's just not worth it.
Something tragic towards the beginning of the pandemic too, speaking of visitation, is initially hospitals weren't letting any visitors in, and there was one lady that we took from Park West to her cancer treatments across the street, and they weren't even letting her sons come up to visit her. And this lady, like,
During
this was probably in like March, and this lady, like, she may or may not make it. Like, radiation's somewhat effective, but like the ophthalmologist heard it there and called and laid into the people at Park West. They finally let her sons come visit her, but like they weren't letting anyone in to come visit people. And like that's ridiculous. What if someone has power of attorney or something, you know?
Yeah, that's really messed up for sure. I mean, I think clearly now that we are like all masked up, like it makes sense to not allow people to come in without a mask or something. But like actually, like if I was in the hospital dying from like a car crash and my parents couldn't like come in, I feel like there would be some hell to pay. You know?
Yeah, I mean, they finally wisened up. Probably about June, they started letting 1 to 2 people in to stay with you, like how it should be, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the rollout of the policies is kind of like it caused like a lot of confusion since like it's kind of like every institution's kind of like doing its own thing, but like figuring it out as it goes, and like many are kind of like reinventing the wheel, like is because like with your work, right? You work for like a company, and there are like other companies that are also doing like EMT stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to have like a unified policy across all of them, since they're all kind of working independently from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some nice stuff other companies too. Like My company probably had better PPE, but another company in Knoxville, the 911 provider, they, whenever their employees, if they ran like 2 COVID calls a week, they got a $500 hazard pay bonus. We didn't get anything like that, but we also had probably better PPE and decontamination policies than they had, I think.
Yeah, so you're less likely to
So
get
it's a
sick.
trade-off.
Yeah. That's yeah. It's
So what do you
interesting.
say? Sorry, you go, John.
It's interesting that like sometimes they'll get like hazard pay. I feel like hazard pay was like around at the very beginning of the pandemic. Pablo disconnected. It's okay. He'll be back. But at the very beginning of the pandemic, like they were offering hazard pay for like restaurants and stuff. I don't think they're offering that anymore. Or like, I mean, maybe some restaurants are, but I haven't heard anything about it recently. Pablo, are you
See,
back?
I also wondered how that hazard pay would work, though. 'Cause it's
Sorry, I
like,
lost connection.
yeah, we'll pay you a percentage of your hourly rate, but then you're a waiter and your hourly rate's technically like $2.13 an hour.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up, I guess.
So what do you say would be like people's biggest like misconceptions like working like EMT? Like what's like the dumbest stuff that you've heard?
I mean, stuff that I haven't heard as misconceptions is like people think I make bank because they see the bill. I get a very small portion of that bill. Like I make 13.36 an hour no matter what call it is, whereas my company can make anywhere from three. Well, they'll bill for anywhere from $300 to $1,500, and that's just for the basic level shit I can do.
Man, where does it all go?
I mean, I imagine a fair amount goes to like administrative, insurance, supplies. Because I mean, medical supply. The price of medical supplies are inflated for us too, but we are also our private company, and our CEO. I mean, this is public, and I shouldn't say bad things about him, but he'll do stuff like. So we have there's our ambulance bay, right? And there's a storage room next to it, a small one we use, and next to that is a big storage room, probably about a third of the size of the whole ambulance bay, and it's just full of antique furniture and paintings owned by our CEO. He just uses that as a storage space.
I feel like that's just typical small business loopholes. Like you're just like,
I mean,
cool.
we aren't a small business though. We are
Well,
the
typical business loopholes.
we're the we're the second or third largest private EMS provider in the country.
Interesting.
Oh man.
But it is EMS provider in the country at your location or just the company in general, but you have a location that you work at? So are there multiple locations, or are they just in Knoxville?
No, I mean, so there are tons of locations across the country, but like they have different brands because they'll buy different companies and keep those brands, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like they all have different names, but they're all the same company.
So it's like the like like stuff in like the grocery store where you think that you're getting like different types of hams from different kinds of brands, but they're all pretty much like owned by like Unilever or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a little different with EMS. You kind of want consistency rather than like, oh, here we'll give you a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you know.
Look, I want some goth EMT. I want some femboy EMT. I need a brand, you know, like have like a Garfield on the side of the wee woo wagon. Come on, like
Yeah,
rather
where's
than
the
the wee
neon?
woo, it's I hate Mondays.
Like we need the neon underlights for the ambulance, blue and red, on the road. That'll be good stuff.
I will say there is one company that my former partner now works for, and their ambulances are painted like the American flag. I'm like, I don't think I could drive that, man. It feels too tacky.
I could totally drive that. I would like wear. I'd like get some American flag sunglasses and stuff, and be like, just embrace my inner Americanite, you know.
I'd just do the tackiness with the American stuff once I get my citizenship. I would have like an American flag hat, American flag shirt, underwear, like pants, socks, shoes, and then go shooting afterwards and be like, yeah, America, for the one day.
College roommate.
I did think of another misconception, and probably the time that I had the hardest bite my tongue. So we were taking a son from a nursing home to his doctor's appointment, and his dad was riding up front with my partner. And I hear his dad just start railing against how socialized medicine is going to be the death of us and how it's going to ruin this country. Well, if you look at your son's pay information, it's being paid for by Medicare and Medicaid. But I'm not going to say anything and cause trouble. But
Yeah.
like,
I mean, people just have their opinions, I guess. It's interesting that your parents don't have any, don't understand the viewpoint. Also, thank you, Chat Goblins, for being entertaining for me.
Like, I'm surprised at how many people are just mystified by like the way that the U.S. healthcare system works versus other countries. Like they think that what is it that they think that's going on that's so good over here? You know, like you get like an expensive bill, you have to ask for it to be itemized. You can contest the charges and things like that, but sometimes you can negotiate to go into a payment plan. But it's a lot of money that
I think mostly what people think is good here is we have good doctors. Not that there aren't good doctors elsewhere, and we have good technology. But we also have more regulations than other places, which means that like newer treatments won't necessarily get approved right away, correct?
I know it can take a lot of money for the FDA to like approve a drug and go through the research process.
I would say that there are very good and affordable doctors in places even like in Argentina.
Oh yeah, definitely. The fear I've heard about socialized medicine is people see their medical bills and they're like, well, if we have socialized medicine, I'll have to be footing the bills for other people's expensive bills. But two things on that. One, the bills would be cheaper because you'd have more collective bargaining power. And two, you're already footing those bills because tons of homeless and uninsured people go to hospitals, don't pay those bills, and you think those bills just go away? No, the hospitals will just up everyone else's bill to pay for it.
Or they just shut down if they're like rural hospitals and don't have the money, right?
Yeah. There's still a derelict hospital in Knoxville, St. Mary's. They're planning on tearing it down and putting the headquarters of the police and fire department there, though.
I remember as a younger me, I thought about breaking into it and doing, not breaking into it. I wasn't gonna break anything, but sneaking in, because I think it'd be cool to be in an abandoned hospital.
I have heard it from older EMTs though. There's literally a nursing home right across the street, NHC Knox. So they used to get discharges from that hospital to the nursing home, and they wouldn't even go in the ambulance. They just wheel them across the street, and get on the radio, and say, "Oh, we're transporting." Okay, we've arrived.
All right. So I want to switch topics because I feel like we've been talking about EMT for a little bit.
Yeah.
Here is my icebreaker. Oh man, it's not next to me. I lied. But I thought I had a bottle of juice next to me that I was about to pour into a glass. I have decided I like Mexican juice more than traditional American juice. Have you guys ever had Tampico?
Yeah.
I think so.
Tampico, very good. It is literally sugar water.
I think I know what makes it good.
It's thick.
With Latin American juices, they don't add high fructose corn syrup, or same with the sodas. They just add sugar.
See, I'd be interested in doing a blind taste test of all the Cokes. You get Mexican Coke, regular Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero. See how accurate you guys could be.
I am pretty confident I could get a 100% hit rate on all the different types of Coke.
I'm confident that you would not get 100%.
I would maybe it'd be maybe difficult to tell Diet Coke and Coke Zero apart.
Sounds like an episode idea, though.
Look, we can do this next week. We can do this next week. I'll pick up some Cokes. But the problem is we need to do it. I need to be blind. I need to be blind for it.
Huh.
And I don't know how we would do a randomization over the internet without someone else randomizing them for me.
You mail it to me, and I mail it back to you in unlabeled bottles.
That sounds like...
it's flat by the time it gets to you. You're like, these all taste awful.
Yeah.
But it's my theory, Chris. So Chris is in the chat saying Tampico is literally high fructose corn syrup, and I'm like, whatever. They don't subsidize corn syrup like they do up here.
My theory for why I like Tampico is because it's just thick. It's very viscous. It's got a great mouthfeel. And so This also means it would be really good for a mixer. Compared to like cranberry juice works pretty well because cranberries are like pretty aggressive of a flavor. But I think orange juice is honestly too subtle of a juice. Because it doesn't.
Unless it's like a smoothie or a milkshake, I don't really like my drinks thick. Like, have you ever had like 15% strength beer?
Yeah.
Oh.
It just tastes like syrupy and wrong to me. Like,
I mean, it's not it's not syrupy thick. It's just like a little more viscous than the average like orange juice that you'd find in America.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. You should buy Tampico. It's also really good for putting vodka in. Facts.
Look, John, if they're giving you sponsorship money, you need to let us know.
Yeah, well, you're not getting a dime of that.
Yeah, I just saw like this YouTube video that talked about like why YouTubers have to like advertise. I mean, they have to say when something's an ad, because apparently like there's some rules. Like if it looks like you're endorsing a product in some affected manner, right? Then you have to disclose it. But in other cases, you could just like have like a little thing that says ad like in the corner, or I don't know. But that only matters if like a few people are actually looking at your
So,
stream.
If I'm recalling what you're
snitch on
talking
us.
about, if I'm recalling what you're talking about, right? I think that started as like an Instagram. It's like an FCC regulation. It started as like an Instagram thing because like the Kardashians would always be like, "Oh, I just really love this brand of makeup for no reason whatsoever," and then they find out they're getting paid millions to say that. So it's like, no, you have to say that's an ad. Which, I mean, it's fair, right?
I mean, I kind of think it's a good thing. Like, if we were actually being advertisers, I think I would want to disclose, like, hey, I am being paid for this.
There's like a lot of articles that are written in such a way to appear like advice, like how-tos on how to solve
yeah, and
particular
they're always like,
problems or
buy
whatever.
this thing.
Yeah, it's like a very subtle, like trying to steer you to buying a product. It's like actually an advertisement, but it tries to sell itself as like a objective research type thing.
A lot of those types of articles will also be like published by the people who are selling the product on their own website usually, and it'll be like, here's what you need to know about this thing, and here's why you should buy our product because it's the best.
My favorite's when you like look up a cooking recipe and like the first 2/3 of it is just someone's life story about what this recipe means to them. It's like, no, I just want like the recipe itself. I don't want to know about how this helped you with your grandma and connect with your grandma on Sunday afternoons.
That's my problem. Like I feel like that makes sense to have in like a cooking book. Like if you have a cookbook by a specific person. Like I have the Food Lab by Kenji Lopez Alt, and he like has like stories about him learning how to cook in his like before his things, but they're really easy to skip because you can just skip the page and be like, here's the actual recipe, loser. But like I don't care about some random article person. Like I've never heard of you at all. I don't care. I think. Go ahead.
Plus, it could just be written by an AI too. I see a lot of those that are like, I don't think the story's real.
Yeah,
it's like they always make reference to like this one place like in Italy. Like I don't remember like where it is. Tuscany. There we go. They're always like, oh, this like shit in Tuscany. What the fuck's like? Every recipe, well, not every recipe, but there's just so many recipes that refer to Tuscany or some shit like that. And I'm like, are they particularly known for their recipes? Like, what? Like, come on, you know, like. What's so great about Italy? Like Argentina's just as good. Why not talk about that?
Well, to be fair, when I asked you to name some like specifically Argentine cuisine, you could give me like 2 answers. But if you ask me to name some Italian cuisine and I'm not from there, like there's a million. Well, not like a million. At least like a couple dozen.
I could give you more than 2 answers, but it's like, why Tuscany in particular? Because Italy as a whole, you know, has like a ton of like different like recipes and things like that or whatever. Like, you know, you got the pizza, you got the lasagna, you got the fazool, you know. But Tuscany in particular is the place that's like mentioned in a lot of recipes.
Isn't Tuscany? Don't they make a lot of wine there?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's just most of Western Europe, like Spain, Italy, France.
Yeah.
Fair.
Of course, it's not champagne unless it's from the Champagne region of France.
And of course, Malbec comes from Argentina. It comes from Mendoza.
Yeah, you can totally just buy sparkling wine. But
Tuscany is not a city; it's a whole region.
oh
With
yeah,
Florence
okay.
as the capital.
Okay.
Shows what we know. But the
We got the American geography education, so we got to make up for.
I mean, I've seen a couple JoJo parts about Italy. I think I know what I'm talking about.
look, don't be. Gosh.
I forget like the names of like the little islands that are around like Italy's shore. Like I constantly forget like what the name of like
There's Capri.
Crete?
yeah like the
No,
okay
Crete
so,
in Greece.
so Italy is like a boot and it's like kicking what looks like kind of like a little like tear-shaped turd or something like that. And I
Yeah,
always
it's kicking the
forget what
Sicilian soccer ball.
yes, okay, so it's Sicily. That's I called that whole island a tear-shaped turd. This is a Sicily hate channel.
No, we're not a Sicily
Yeah.
hate channel. We love
Well,
Sicily.
what can the Sicilians do to us? I mean, they just have a little mafia, you know.
If you're a Sicilian, smash that like button, okay?
Wait, how do I say fuck Sicily in Italian?
No! We gotta hashtag Sicily this.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta get some strong emotions. So then we have like our apology tour afterwards. Like, we're so sorry that like we made these
Well,
comments about.
We're gonna have to learn to
Pizza
speak
comes
Italian.
from Sicily.
We're gonna have to learn how to speak Italian to apologize to these people.
Well, John, you can already fluently speak Italian given by how much you speak with your hands anyway.
You're right! This is why the video format's so
Oh
much
yeah.
better.
I mean, I can almost speak Italian. I know French and Spanish, so you can just combine them a bit. But you know, if you want to say "fuck Sicily," you have to say "fanculo la Sicilia." You know, you gotta.
Alright,
That's
so
how you say it.
Pablo's got us covered with his like half Italian Sprinch. Is that how we say it? Spanish?
Franglish.
Frenish?
Franglespagnol. Something like that.
Franglespagnol.
I like trying to talk to someone about the way that I try to speak French, in which I combine like Spanish and English, and I try to like figure out which vocabulary comes from French from that. I'm just like, oh, it's Franglespagnol. That's what it's called.
I recently learned of a better way to learn languages than like the typical classroom format. So there was a way developed after World War II to spread the English language, where you just memorize the 800 most commonly used words, and you use those to construct sentences. Because basically, in most language classes, you just start off like, oh, you need to learn how to conjugate everything and the name of it and all these obscure vocabulary words. And then you get into a situation where you actually need to like use it, and you're like, how do I talk to people?
I feel like you learn languages like the same way a baby does. You just have to like work your way through the different stages of development, like yourself. It's like you're raising yourself as a kid, but in a different language. Like you can watch like kids programs. You learn like the words for like water or like hospital or police or things like that. And you just like work your way up the media and like the K-12 education system, but just in a different language. Like, I don't think anybody learns how to speak properly the second they're born. They're usually figuring it out as they go. And if you're interacting with people, if you're going online and talking to people, if you're engaging with media, you're going to pick up on the patterns anyway. And so I think like this big emphasis on just like going through all the different conjugations or whatever is just a very unnatural way of going about learning the language. Because you quickly forget it too. If you're just memorizing it quickly and you're not using it, I'm just like, it leaves people graduating from these Spanish classes going like, when am I ever going to use this? Because they didn't learn it by engaging with something.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's why, like, I was learning to speak. I was learning Japanese a little bit because thought I was going to go on a trip to Japan, and I was like reading the like Japanese textbooks that they recommend, like Genki. But I picked up. I forget what manga it was. I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it. But it was like it was Initial D, which because apparently the Japanese in that's really simple words usually.
Isn't that a racing manga?
Yeah, it's about racing cars. But I got the Japanese version of Initial D, and I was like, this is going to be the first thing I read when I can actually read decent Japanese. And then I just stopped learning, so I sold it. But
So don't you read Japanese like up and down, but also right to left?
so I think so, but I also never got far enough for that to matter for me.
Okay.
But I believe that it's right to left, up and down, but sometimes also just right to left. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I used to have like this book. I don't know where it went, but it was like this like little like children's book that's like in French, and I would just like I would watch things like Peppa Pig, and so I would try to get something where I would listen to an audiobook of like the first Harry Potter. And I know Harry Potter cringe, but like I knew the storyline and the story beats already. So it's like even if you don't understand what's going on in like a particular place, you can be like, oh, like the scene that happened before this is when like Dursley kid is like upset about his amount of gifts, and the scene after this is like when that like the fucking snake comes out of whatever. So like you can kind of like pick up on some like language things, but the first Harry Potter book was like too advanced for me, and I'm just like, what's between Harry Potter and Peppa Pig, you know?
So wait, when they translate Harry Potter, do they make up new words for the magic words, or they just like
No, the magic words are Latin.
I mean, some. I guess they are, but like I guess you just pronounce. A native speaker would read them differently than an English speaker would, if that makes sense.
Maybe, like, I guess like if you say Wingardium like with the English phonetics, it's different than like the Spanish phonetics where like
Or
you're like
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium. I don't know.
It's
I can't-
Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Es Leviosa. Che, es Leviosa, boludo. Some fucking like Argentine Hermione. Pelotudo, es Leviosa.
That's
Or would it be Hermione?
Hermione. I
Like
wish
in the fifth
I.
book or something, they had to clarify how Hermione's name is like pronounced. Maybe the third book. I'm not a fucking Harry Potter scholar, so but I knew that they had to do that at one point.
Pablo, have you picked up on like different things, like maybe watching something in English and Spanish, or like reading something in English and Spanish of like weird translation issues in like popular media?
I mean, I can think of something. We all recently played a game called Monster Hunter World together, except our friend Pablo here insisted on playing it in Spanish initially.
And French.
And then he was like, what's this, guys? What am I supposed to do? And like, we don't know, Pablo. We have no idea what you're talking about.
Trying to kill El Jagra. It's like, oh, the Jagra? Some of them would be the same, but other things they would completely change the names, like the scout flies. They would call them like a single word that was something else, and it'd be like a very like proper noun name. It wouldn't be like a descriptive thing where it's just like scout and fly added together, and like it has some differences. What bothers me though is when you're watching something in a different language with closed captions in a different language, and the closed captions don't line up with the audio. Like they have just different things written down. So and this happens a lot with French when I try to watch things like anime or whatever. I'm like, oh, anime has subs and dubs, right? Like in English, Spanish, French, whatever. But if you put it in French and you're listening to it and you're also seeing the writing on the bottom, it doesn't match up because it seems like they, like, I don't know if they translate the audio and then make the writing afterwards.
I think they
or if they're just,
localize
like,
it, so they
yeah.
they might be translating it, but they're also just like rewriting it to make more sense in the new language.
But like when it comes to like the differences, it's usually like the voice actors, which I think is like really funny because like in Spanish, like especially when it comes to children's media, they have like the same couple of voice actors that are kind of like recycled. So like with people like fucking Dexter, like he would sound like, "Oye, Didi, no te estás metiendo en mi laboratorio," and it would sound like the same as like Ash Ketchum or whatever, and he would just be like, everyone would just be like a couple octaves up or something like that.
I kind of like that. I feel like that's kind of funny because like I'm forgetting what game show I was watching, but I was watching some like Japanese show. Oh, it's called Extreme Skill, and they're like Extreme Skill. You should definitely look it up on YouTube. Get off of our podcast; it's not worth watching. Go to Extreme Skill. But there was like one episode where like some guy was like really good at pogo sticking, and then like one episode where they're like, who can get the sharpest pencil? But all like they have like 5 English voice actors to translate every single Japanese person, and there's one guy who's like, yes, I'm Japanese, and I have extreme skill. And he always does the people who are like a little mysterious, maybe a little shy. I find if you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you watch one of these extreme skill episodes.
I remember a while ago, Pablo and I were watching a Hayao Miyazaki movie called Laputa, The Castle in the Sky, and Pablo's like, I wonder what the Spanish dub of this is, because they'd read it as La Puta, which translates to the bitch. So are they just saying, oh look, it's the bitch in the sky the whole time?
I looked it up, and it turns out they keep everything the same. So there'd be like a person who was like, la puta. It was like, what? Like everybody's fucking laughing their ass off, and it turns out that people have like taken clips because it's just so funny to them that it's like a GIF reaction like meme thing that people put. Like if someone's being a total fuckhead, they just put like the little GIF where it's like the lady like and the guy like popping out of the corner and seeing the island and being like, la puta.
That's pretty funny actually. I feel like sometimes I feel like things like that existing due to like weird translation things is better than them like renaming it, because like now it's like an entirely different meme.
I remember I heard when they were originally making Dark Souls, they didn't know how to translate it to English well, so the initial title was going to be Dark Ring. And they premiered that at a UK convention. Everyone's like, it means anus. So they're like, oh, we have to go Dark Souls.
I've never heard of that. That's definitely a UK thing, I think. All right, Alex, I gotta know, what are you vaping in there?
It's just nicotine.
Yeah, but like what flavor?
It is tropical blue lemonade.
Hot. That sounds pretty
Another thing
delicious.
about languages though is like there was like this thing where they tried to advertise like this chocolate, and they were like it's like délicieux each bite, you know. But the thing is that they were trying to use like a French word for like delicious that was still like recognizable in English. But the thing is, with using bite around a French word, if you're reading it in French, it says bite, which means penis. So like and I only
Delicious
remember this
penis.
because I was like looking at memes, and there was this meme in French where there's this guy like spinning on his head while naked and like T-posing, and like it's like mid like it's like a freeze frame, so it's like his like dick's pointing like away from you and you can't see it, and on the bottom it was like helicobité second generation or something like that, like and helicobité means helicopter dick. So it's like rather than like helicopter dicking like this, he was just spinning on his head or whatever. But that permanently inputted into my brain what bite mean. But yeah, like there's so many things that translate really badly, especially when it came to the crayons that say black in Spanish on them. Very awkward moment for everyone involved.
Yeah. We don't need to get into that. But
It's another language. It's another language.
we don't want to get
It's
demonetized.
another language.
Probably we haven't even been monetized yet. We can't be demonetized before we get monetized. Come on.
I've never even. Okay. Look, the thing is that it's one thing if you're like saying it so that you can get around, like, and just like be an asshole, right? But it's another thing when it's like literally just like what it means in the other language, and it's not even how people like with darker skin are even referred to in your country, right? It's just like the word for black, you know. And even like in America, like it's not offensive to call not to call someone black, but to describe someone as being black, right? Or being, like, it's like it's mostly like I guess like a liberal colorblind type thing to be like, oh, this person's like come on, like how are you going to be able to acknowledge that anything bad is happening to this person if you're not even like willing to admit that like that that their race is black or something like that, or that they're perceived that way, right? Like it's a way of like hiding actual problems by failing to describe them, or just like covering your eyes and being like, I don't see what's going on. I don't see color, right?
Plus, I mean, if someone wants to identify that way, I'm happy for them. But I don't like the whole like continent American thing, like African, Asian American. Like Africa and Asia are huge places. Same I heard like a lot of, well, to be redundant, Native American people don't like the term Native American because it's very nondescriptive. Like an Inuit person doesn't have that much in common with an Incan person, you know.
Yeah, like it makes sense to be like Cherokee, like yeah, I'm Cherokee or something. Like, interesting. I agree. I think it makes more sense to like do country specific, but then I feel like people just don't know.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with African American. Like, their history has been erased from them. They don't necessarily know what country they came from.
Yeah, or you could just, I mean, at this point, I guess it's
You can,
true.
I mean, some people are and are not comfortable with being described as black, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it's however they feel.
I don't think it's offensive inherently, you know.
Yeah.
It's a case by case basis, really. Like if someone tells you, "Oh, I prefer this" or "I prefer that,"
Yeah.
you just go with it, because like if it really doesn't matter, then just go with whatever makes the most people comfortable. But when it comes to like hyphenated American things, like I feel like it's mostly defined in terms of how like the predominant popular culture interprets race, and it's usually like white people, right? Like when it came to like the Supreme Court, back when part of like the requirement for being a naturalized citizen was to be white and like and have land or something like that, the way that they defined white, they would first be like, oh, it's Caucasian, and then somebody from like the Caucasus region who's like would be like, oh, I'm Caucasian because I'm from like this place in the Middle East, right? So that's in the Caucasus region. I'm Caucasian. They'd be like, no, actually, that's not what it means. They'd say whiteness is not really defined scientifically. What in the court, the Supreme Court said this. They would say that whiteness is whatever the average white man considers it to be. And that's how like Italians became white, like Irish people became white, with like the creation of the suburbs around like the 1940s or whatever. And I forget where I'm going with this. Well, and so it's like the same thing with everything else. Like if you could be like a mid-tone, right? Like you could be in between, and you're automatically funneled in to like, oh, you're Puerto Rican or like Mexican or something like that. Or like if you're Afro-Latino, you're not actually Afro-Latino. You're just black, because it's not about like the interpretation of like what you actually are, where you're actually from. It's about like what some fucking random dude like some usually a white guy sees when they look at you, right? And so they're not going to distinguish, be like, oh, this guy's from Cambodia, or like, oh, this guy's from Laos, oh, this guy's from Kyrgyzstan, or the contested territory of fucking, I don't know. They just look at people and they're like, oh, Asian, right? Even if they're like from the Philippines or something like that. And so that's why.
Hold on, this is for you, Chris.
Because they're usually just trying to describe the kind of shit that happens
Sponsored
with bias, racial bias, and things like that when they're going for hyphenated American type things.
Oh man, I'm trying to find my headphones, but I don't know where they are. I think that if you're gonna buy earbuds, the best price performance are Anchor sound buds. They're very good.
Also, never get, okay, this is an anti-endorsement. Never get like these fucking
Those are Impals, right?
Cohen E7s.
Oh, Cowan E7s.
Cowen E7s. They're terrible because even if you have them plugged in directly to the computer, you still have to have them charged, right? Because they run out of battery. So you have to keep charging them. Like like this, the battery is low on this, so I have to have two freaking cables attached to my head. This is not good. Don't get them.
I have way too many pairs of headphones. So I have these headphones that I'm using today. These are AKG, Audio-Technica ATH M50s, Bluetooth. So the reason I'm using these instead of these is because they block more noise since we're recording a podcast. These are my normal desktop ones. Austin Carter recommended these to me. These are Philips. They're great. And then I also have like Sony's. I have way too many headphones. I need to stop. I need some like Marie Kondo headphone in my life. I need to simplify down to like one pair.
You gotta donate them, like, right? You got people who are in need of headphones.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, in some ways I want to buy more headphones because some of them are better for certain things than others. Like, these headphones are really good if I still want to hear stuff because I can still hear. But my Sony's just completely block everything out. So they're really good for airports.
That's actually what I have too. These are Sony's that are noise canceling if I charge them. I mainly use the noise canceling though if I'm like mowing the lawn or something.
Yeah. I also have this pair of headphones, which are conveniently within reach as well, because I have 3 pairs of headphones right next to me. These are really good, but and they're like Aventries, but they're terrible because if you like put anything in the way, I'm talking like put your hand on top of your phone, the Bluetooth signal will cut out. And the Bluetooth signal is like a 7 feet distance. So if you walk away from your desk or something and your phone's on your desk, you just can't hear anything. So I would not buy these, even though they sound good for the price. This was a weird tangent. Show and tell.
Okay. To kind of go back to the conversation we were having earlier, I don't like when someone who's like their great grandparents and beyond have been here describes themselves as like, oh, I'm an Irish American, I'm a German American. I'm like, you're at least 5 generations in. You're just American, bro. I'm sorry.
Not that I want to gatekeep, but I feel like definitely unless you're like going to visit like family in those countries, I don't know if you can really like count.
Yeah, I'm an Argentine American. I have my family in Argentina. Suck it.
You also moved here from Argentina, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was born abroad. I mean, the thing, like, even I watch like Irish Twitter. I love Irish Twitter, and like they're constantly making fun of like Americans, especially on St. Patrick's Day, because it'd be like, oh, you're like a 14.6% Irish. You're like people don't perceive it like that. People in Ireland are like you're not Irish. You've been over there for 3 generations. Like at a certain point, you're completely Americanized.
Well, yeah.
Your shit's all
European American.
Yeah.
That's how I identify.
It's like who even? I don't know how much of like the remnants of European culture like remained in the United States after.
I mean, there's definitely obviously have this heavy British influence in like our legal codes and whatnot.
Yeah, and of course the colonialism and settler imperialism.
Look, we don't have colonies. We have protectorates and territories. Okay.
Yeah, and just places that we install a dictator if they're not behaving the way that we want them to.
Or we just nuke the Marianas, but we give them. There's the nation. They're an independent nation. They just have a compact with us.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, that seems to be our European heritage. That and all like the freaking plants and bugs that we brought from Europe that just like wreak havoc on like the environment. Yeah, it's like we had English ivy growing everywhere.
I don't understand. I don't know if there's just like the will to do it of why we can't get rid of wild boar. They do billions of dollars of property damage a year, but it's not like a rat or something that's hard.
Oh no, we lost Alex.
Oh no! Yeah.
Oh no!
Wild boar. We were talking about wild boar.
I'm back. Hold on, let me turn my video again.
The problem with the web show.
Yeah, there's that whole thing on Twitter with like the 30 to 40 wild hogs and why this person needed to have like a semi-automatic weapon to defend their children from the feral hogs.
Part of the problem I think is pigs actually boar breed really quickly. Like they just completely breed as fast as possible, and like unlike humans, like a boar will have like 6 or 7 piglets, hoglets.
Exponential growth.
Yeah, so if you like let them get free for a little bit, there'll be like they breed so fast that there will just be so many of them.
Back over here.
I mean, it's like Australia. Australia went to freaking war with its ostriches and lost because.
Well,
like,
it went to war with emus, but first of all,
yeah.
I don't know why they did that. I mean, they did it because farmers were annoyed, but emus are a native species to there. Like,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you're gonna go to war with something, at least let it be invasive.
yeah. Uh, I wish like we would get rid of like okay, so that there's like this particular type of termite that like kills. Well, it's not like a termite. If an entomologist knew about this podcast, they'd argue with me, and they'd be right.
No,
But it's
we need
like
to be we need to be purposely wrong, Pablo, so people feel the need to correct us and we get more attention.
We need to get an
Oh, yeah.
We need to get an we need to get an entomologist on this podcast to correct the record.
I could get someone who's entomologist adjacent. They study spiders.
This sounds
but-
great. This sounds awesome. I want this.
All right, we'll get
you,
them
you
on
need
the
to, you need to
podcast.
label the podcast Spider-Man.
Well, yeah. But like there's like this bug and it came from like Asia originally, so it doesn't have like the things that attack it, and it like really prefers to just fuck up our oak trees, and it just like creates like all these like tunnels in
Oh,
them.
I know what you're talking about. It made like the American hickory tree like extinct. Maybe it's like the American chestnut tree.
Yeah, it's like the fucking worst bug
It's like
in the
I
world.
think it's a Japanese weevil, if I'm right. I could be wrong.
I think it was
You're
Chinese,
You're
but
not talking about the pine beetles?
but no, it's not the pine needles. I mean, there's this other bug that's like yeah, it's these bugs that are fucking up our trees, and they upset me a lot because as the summers get hotter and longer, their breeding period extends, and for a lot of trees that like grow in colder climates, like they start like moving upwards too. So it's like two pressures on like the trees that like really hurt our forests. And so since lots of people are like, oh, if we want to reverse climate change, we have to plant more trees, right? Well, it's not going to do us any good if those trees don't stay alive when we plant them. And so I'm just like, fuck these invasive species, man. Like, but all the time, whenever like they're moving wood around, and there's some outbreak of some kind of like of these kinds of bugs, they have quarantines and they have like shutdowns on things like with like coronavirus. They're like, oh yeah, you can't move this kind of wood around for like this period, you know.
Have you guys heard about the cicadas that are like waking up supposedly this summer? And it's like this like breed of cicadas only wakes up like every 13 years or something.
So, my understanding how cicadas works is each of them has a different length of hibernation cycle, and different ones will appear at different times. But also, what's interesting is their strategy is like they're not particularly like fast or like have any like poison in them. Is they just have numbers on their side. Like the predators will feast till they're full, but still so many cicadas survive to breed that like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, apparently this is the largest hibernation cycle. And so this summer, cicadas will blot out the sun. Not exactly, not that much, but they're going to be a lot more than normal. So if you're going to go outside in the summer in the south, they shouldn't be around where I'm at because I'm in Denver, but it's supposed to be like so loud.
Oh man.
Particularly this year.
But that reminds me of like the acorn strategy for oak trees, like how they manage to get squirrels to like bury so many nuts that they lose track, and so that they're able to like propagate. Like the oak trees, like they give like a little bit of acorns like for like 3 seasons in a row, but then on like the 4th season or something like that, they give like a shit ton of acorns just to like overpower like the squirrels just like with numbers. So they kind of like throw shit off balance so that they can have like all these like extra acorns around. Like the cicadas kind of like do something similar, in which they have like this very like staggered uneven like breeding cycle thing where it's like, okay, like these have like this certain cycle, these have like this other certain cycle, but they all synchronize at a certain point where there's so many of them they can't all be eaten.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It seems like a common like little like a hack strategy for dealing with like how ecosystems tend to balance around certain amounts of things. Some are like purposely trying to get around that by like it's like that thing in fighting games where you're like conditioning your opponent to expect certain reactions from you, and then you switch it up on them immediately to be able to get like the upper hand for a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird how populations work like that.
I think something we don't think about enough is like how plants communicate with each other. Like, the largest living organism, which if you want to call it one organism, is an aspen forest in Utah. That's the same tree that just grows clones from its roots. But they've also discovered like the tree communicates with itself for the roots. Like if there is a if there's not a lot of nutrients in one part, other trees will send nutrients to it for the roots. That's some Avatar shit, right? Like the whole forest just speaks to each other.
Yeah, like the little mycelium, like fungal networks, like in like the dirt.
Yeah.
Which is wild. Aspens are really cool trees too. Like, are they still considered a tree, or are they considered a different type of plant?
I think they're considered a tree. I mean, I'm no botanist, but I think they are.
There's a ton of
All I know
aspens
is
around
that you
me.
can tell when something's an aspen by the way that it is.
Yeah.
No,
also,
it's not an aspen unless it's from the Aspen region of Colorado. Okay.
And
Yeah.
Chris is in the comments section. He's saying the breeding cycle for cicadas 16 years, and it's not oak trees; it's southern pine. If I have
Well,
it correctly.
Chris, you're
to
wrong.
correct the record.
It depends on the species of cicada of how long their hibernation cycle is. So
No, but
get checked.
the cycle in which they all harmonize and kind of like all
Yeah, I think
fucking
he's
come out
talking
all at
about
once.
like the 16-year cycle. Yeah, I don't know if it was 13 or 16, so I'm just gonna agree on
No,
Chris.
what I'm saying is
Also,
like
this
different
is a ratchet
species have
wrench
different
that
lengths of cycles.
Yeah, but if the cycles are in units which are relatively prime to each other, then they are going to meet at particular points. Fun math fact. So if you have cycles that aren't relatively prime, like you have something that goes every 2 seconds and something that goes every 4, and they're off from each other by a little bit, they'll never synchronize. But if you have something that like is going like at a period of like 3 RPM or something like going at a period of 7, and those are two relatively prime numbers, there will be a point in which they synchronize and then mismatch again.
Yeah, and then I like. It's interesting as well because like I don't know what cicadas eat or anything, but I'm assuming that they'll just completely mess up the ecosystem. And if you were the cicada that like woke up the next year, maybe you don't have as much food.
Yeah, but the messing of the ecosystem is kind of like part of the ecosystem.
Well, no, yeah, but like it's not sustainable to have that many cicadas every year. They can do it.
I mean,
for
that's their
this year.
strategy.
Yeah. It's not. I don't even know if it's a strategy. It's just like how it's worked out.
yeah. I mean, that's like the whole niche, like ecological niche thing. Like if it's working, just
It's also
do it.
weird how they can just survive in stasis for 17 years. Like you figure like predators would know about them and dig them up, but I guess there's just so many of them, and like just being able to hibernate for 17 years and being able to like restart and have all your organs enough energy to do that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some fungi that survive like a super long time and only come out like during like forest, like 100-year forest fires.
That's cool. I wish, like from like, that perspective, I feel like it's really hard for humans to like associate because we sleep every day. But like I think it's interesting that bears can hibernate for an entire winter. Like that's a long time to sleep.
Yeah, especially for a warm-blooded animal too.
Yeah.
I kind of think that humans do hibernate. It's just like we have all like artificial lights and like this whole like modern like work schedule that we're kind of like in denial about it. But when it comes to like seasonal depression and like sometimes I think like, you know what, maybe we were kind of meant a little bit to like shut down during the winter, you know?
Well, yeah, I don't like not entirely shut down. You still have to eat and stuff, but yeah, I don't think people have not been doing as much as they're doing in modern days during the winter. They would eat, they would put wood on the fire, and they would shiver, and that's basically what they did.
But I'm not sure how much of that is evolutionary though, because humans are from like equatorial Africa, where like seasons don't really happen. You know, I mean, there's like the dry and the wet season.
But enough time would pass that basically like we would be vitamin D deficient enough that people would gain an advantage from like having skin
White
that's
skin.
like more sensitive to the sun, right?
And
In other
blue
places.
eyes so you can see the snow.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna take some vitamin D right now.
I got brown
I don't think
eyes,
that's
so-
illegal on camera, John.
When there's snow outside, I don't see it. It's very bad.
Vitamin D3, 5,000 IUs.
Hard D takes the D.
I'm taking 2. What a rebel.
But yeah, like I think that we would have something like that. I also feel like we would sleep like at noon, like the whole Spanish siesta thing. I think that that's something like kind of normal because it would be so hot during the midday that you would just lose a lot of energy and it wouldn't be real productive, right? To just fuck around or something like that. Or like you would read stuff and be like, oh, there's a reason why you wake up at 3 a.m. because that's your time to just to have sex. I don't know, like it's just interesting that these like cycles or whatever, but like I feel like we're in denial of a lot of what might just be human nature because of like the kinds of pressures that our modern workplaces put on us.
Oh, I feel like Spanish siestas make sense in general though. Like people are never as productive right after lunch, at least for like office jobs. They're just like, yeah, I'm sleepy. I just ate some food. I don't want to be here. Like, okay, I think society would be a better place if we had siestas.
There is, I mean, not to get back into EMS, but there is another EMS company I was kind of interested in working for because I heard they give you like 1 to 2 mental health days a month where like you don't use sick time. It's just like, ugh, I can't come into work today. I'm not sick. I just can't mentally do it. You can take off the day and get paid for it.
Yeah.
I'd like if we just had like the 4-day work week with siestas. But well, actually not the cool thing. The terrible thing when it comes to like siestas is that they're like a common thing in other places, but in the United States, like there's kind of like this way that Spanish immigrants were like demonized as like being lazy or something, like using the siesta, you know, or like that. Oh, they're like sleeping all the time or whatever. Like I feel like America is anti-sleeping in this manner.
I'm anti-sleeping, Pablo, because
If you're not sleeping, you're not working.
I'm anti-sleeping because apparently there's like some disorder that like if you're like you were forced to go to bed early and you didn't like that, a lot of people will not be good at sleeping later in life because they're trying to like, for a while they're trying to fight the system, man, and stay up late. And then it just becomes habit. And I think that's what happened to me.
I will say working night shift, I don't know what staying up late means anymore. Like,
Time's a concept.
I normally go to bed at 6. I'm like, if I go to bed at 8, you know, like, is that like staying up till midnight or something? I don't know.
Yeah,
Pretty
I do
much,
school, and I stay inside. So the concept of time, especially because their lectures are recorded and I can watch them like at my whim, until there's like a homework assignment due, then there's like that deadline. But like time's just not real. Like the only thing that makes time real is the fact that I have to take my dog out like every once in a while. But my dog like is fine going out at like 4 a.m. It's like, I have no more thoughts beyond that.
Yeah, well, for me, definitely, time has. I feel like I echo that as well, Pablo. Like I've always kind of had the same schedule. Like since I started working, I wake up at 7 a.m. every day. But during COVID, time really isn't real because I just never leave my apartment unless like during a regular day, I'm not leaving my apartment no matter what I'm doing. And I have to work from certain hour to hour, but it's like really easy to lose track of time. And like suddenly,
Well, Alex leaves the house for his job though. Like
yeah, but he works at
Yeah.
strange hours though.
Yeah, I work 5 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah, and I work 7 to 4, but usually it winds up being around 7 to 4:40.
So it's like our conception of time, like very much like oriented around, like compressing together periods that are very similar.
Probably,
like where we're in
yeah.
the same place doing the same stuff.
Also, the sun, for sure, the sun. But if you're waking up at random times every day, you can't really track that as well.
I mean, time also flows differently in different situations. Like, we started this podcast apparently an hour and a half ago, but it doesn't quite feel like it because, you know, just conversation with friends. But, like, if you're in a situation and you don't want to be in, it's boring to you, time will just drag on and on.
Yeah, hopefully this podcast isn't like that for any listeners. We need more chat goblins. Duncan and Chris can't be our only chat goblins.
Yeah, you've all been quiet for a while. It's
They
been
can only
10
type
minutes,
so
no
much.
comments.
I would be interested in our cicada burgers possible.
Yeah, probably.
I've
There's
heard
lots
of
of
companies
recipes.
making cricket burgers.
Yeah.
Like, you grind the crickets into flour.
Cicadas are just bigger, noisier crickets, so
No, there's some recipes that involve cicadas in them. I just think that just people are squeamish when it comes to bugs, but honestly, like,
I've had crickets
why
before.
not?
They're fine. They don't taste good or bad really, but you
Look,
can put flavoring on
as
them.
long as I'm not having to eat like the physical shape of the bug itself, like if it's ground into a powder and put in a patty, I could probably do it.
Hell
I
yeah.
have eaten whole crickets, and I'm fine with that. But I can understand why that kind of grosses people out.
Just finds them around his apartment, you know.
Definitely,
Just add some honey glaze, you know?
I have no like okay,
little
so
sauce.
I have no
Little crunch.
interest in like eating crickets specifically. I just did it because I wanted to try it, you know. But like, it definitely makes more sense to grind them up into a powder for sure, and make like cricket nuggets or something.
Or like little flour, like a protein tortilla.
Yeah, like a cricket tortilla, cricket bread. Let's do it. Let's make a TikTok, Pablo. Cricket bread.
It's so hard to raise crickets though, usually because of like diseases that might spread and just kill your whole stock.
Yeah. Probably the same, just like when you raise chickens factory farming, except for probably mammals. I feel like a mammal is probably slightly more robust than an insect.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's like hard to get like
They're not mammals, they're
like
birds.
the feed in, the waste out, and then get like the crickets through and like also breed the crickets, right? There's like a lot going on with cricket farms.
Something I saw that's kind of interesting is in China they started doing cockroach farms, not to eat the cockroaches, but to like use them as animal feed because like a good portion of our like the crops we eat, wheat and corn, are grown just to feed animals. But this way you can literally just feed the cockroaches your junk and then feed those to like your chickens and pigs and whatnot, fish.
That
Yeah, it's
seems,
most of the
as
negative
gross as
climate
cockroaches are, that seems very sustainable.
Yeah, like a lot of the negative climate effects of like eating beef and pork and things like that is usually just the amount of agriculture that needs to happen for the animal feed to feed that animal. Like 1 pound of beef requires like 10 pounds of like bean protein or something like that from like soy or soybeans or something. And so it's like about like all the pesticides and like fertilizer and like land that needs to be cleared for that. Like a lot of the soybeans that are grown in Argentina and Brazil are to like also feed like the cows there to get like the meat from those countries.
Yeah. I'm surprised it's not a higher number than that, considering how long cows live before we eat them.
Yeah, I mean it might be a bigger number, but it's definitely way less efficient than bug protein or something like that.
Especially because you feed the bugs your junk too, so like the food is gonna go to waste anyway.
Yeah, and and there's some places I think they're doing that with like restaurant waste, like with pigs, but I think probably the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in that. But yeah, like that's why when it comes to like climate change stuff, and especially like with the Green New Deal, it talked a lot about just not just like the cow being like eaten and the stuff that it eats, but also the things that come out of the cow during the course of its life, which is like the methane. And of course, like the conservatives like to joke, oh, they're like concerned about cow farts, but methane is a lot more effective of greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so it's like actually a genuine concern, especially in these concentrated animal feeding operations. There's a lot of methane coming out of those places.
Look, we already have factory farms. We just need to put tubes up the cow's butt, harvest that methane, and then boom, natural gas mine.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like what we do with.
It's a different kind
of
of fracking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's like this fracking that happens when we put like food waste and anaerobic environments like with no air like in landfills. They like put tubes or something like in the landfills to be able to like get the methane that comes from that reaction in order to like turn it into electricity just by burning it.
Sounds like the move, honestly.
Yeah, you got.
Definitely, I think lab-grown meat is the future, though.
I think as long as lab-grown meat winds up tasting the same and isn't as expensive to produce as it is now, I think I'd be fine with eating it. Like,
Or even think of this: lab-grown leather. no one's gonna care about the taste of that, just the quality of it, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if it has same or even potentially even better quality, because you could probably grow it in the perfect shape.
Yeah, because pleather fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Pleather does suck.
But I think like a lot of innovation can also come just from like different like cultural and ethical changes in practices. Like people could just like have less meat in their diets, but that could not just be seen as like a kind of just like different culture thing or like a type of value or whatever. But it's like a kind of like technology, right? Like the way that we live out our lifestyles themselves is the kind and how that interacts with the environment and the infrastructure that we have set up to support that kind of stuff. I think that could be like the advancement that we go towards in the future, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I will say, John was there for it. I tried being a vegetarian for 2 weeks at college.
I don't even
Probably
remember
the hardest. Yeah, you do. Remember the dry chicken sandwich at the end?
Oh, that was it? That was the last day? You're like, oh, I'm gonna...
Yeah, well, we'll tell this whole story in a second, but the hardest part about being a vegetarian in college was there are so few vegetarian options at fast food. It's like, oh, you want some fries? That's about it. You want a bean burrito from Taco Bell?
Yeah, so like a big part of progressing like as like a culture and is just having lifestyle options even available.
Okay, I'll say that
Our environment doesn't support not using a car so much.
That's gotten a lot better for vegetarians, at least not using a car. But like, there's like a lot of vegan restaurants near where like I live now, and I know that like McDonald's now I know Burger King does. I think McDonald's as well, but they offer like Beyond Meat or like Impossible Burgers. That helps, but I don't like how Beyond Meat tastes. Beyond Meat, not very good, in my opinion.
But there's also like a kind of cultural stigma, and again, this is like coming from like the more conservative side of America. That's just like, oh, if you eat these things, then suddenly you're in a effeminate girl boy, and it's coming from people like the freaking like Elf Ben Shapiro or just like Tucker Carlson or whatever, these like supposed paragons of masculinity.
Before we forget, let's get back to Alex's story, because I do love this. This is one of my favorite memories of Alex.
Okay,
honestly.
so I tried being a vegetarian for about 2 weeks. I basically survived off the salad bar in the cafeteria, but I was like, but part of the problem is we had no implements in our dorm to cook anything. We had a toaster and a microwave, and that was it. And we didn't even have a freezer in the mini fridge, so I lasted about 2 weeks. I was getting toward it irritable. It was probably like midnight on a weekday, and I was like, fuck it. I'm done with this. So I drove across the street to the Wendy's to get a chicken sandwich. I came back and took a bite of that chicken sandwich, and I wasn't sure if like just because I hadn't had meat in a while it tasted bad, but it was like the driest chicken sandwich on the planet. And I'm like, John, can you look, can you like bite from another side of this, like confirm I'm not just like crazy and I hate meat now? And he's like, no, that chicken sandwich is awful. And I was so pissed. I called that Wendy's in the middle of the night. I was like, hey, I was just there, and you guys served me the driest chicken sandwich possible. Fuck you. And then I hung up the phone. I'm like, I don't know what I expected from that phone call, but I feel a little better at least.
You ruined that person's night.
They
ruined your night.
Imagine if it's like a completely different person answering the calls versus the one making the sandwiches, and they're just taking the abuse from this one fucker who's like strung out or just like or whatever making sandwiches.
I didn't realize that you were a vegetarian. Maybe it had like lost me due to time.
I tried to be a vegetarian in middle school, but the thing is that the only thing that you could get that was like vegetarian was like the same fucking salad every single day. So it's really just about what the environment supports. It's not just like your
Well, salads aren't even that nutritious though. Like, if you want to do vegetarian right, you gotta like have beans and like higher calorie options.
Yeah, they didn't have beans.
Salads don't have enough calories to sustain you. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, so like really a lot of the things that we think are choices are really not a choice because our whole environment is structured to just be like, you have to live this way. This is how we do shit
Well,
here.
I would
you
say
know?
that now it's easier than ever to become vegetarian or vegan right now. I've
Well, it
never done it
depends.
because I
Chris is in the
know
chat saying that there's like a rural urban divide when it comes to
probably in
spicy.
Denver
Yeah.
it's really easy if you wanted to be vegetarian because there's so many options. In Atlanta, it would have been really easy to do because there's so many options. I feel like when I visited other places, it's still easier than ever because you can buy good vegan stuff in the grocery store, and also like Burger King has the Impossible Whopper or whatever, so like that's an option.
Yeah,
But
but like
still, not
culturally
a,
also can be
still
it can be
not
difficult.
easy. It's still a very difficult path to become a vegan or a vegetarian.
And
And it's also not necessarily good all the time. Like if you hunt like deer and you eat that deer meat, like it can be good for the ecosystem to have less deer because if they're overpopulated, they start eating all the plants and that
Yeah.
causes the soil to get loose and you get the certification or some shit. Like I think we all saw the thing about like the returning the wolves to fucking Yellowstone or something like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
you
don't
go ahead.
I don't find that I need like I've never even tried being a vegetarian because I know that I like meat too much. But also meat is a very valuable macronutrient. You get a ton of protein from meat and it's not really meat is not bad for you in like any way pretty much. As long as like even really fatty cuts of meat like you're getting a lot of good nutrients. Like obviously if you eat too much steak, all right, maybe you'll get gout, but I think a lot of that is like you aren't an active person and you're just eating a bunch of fatty foods. Know?
Have you heard of like the whole thing where like Jordan Peterson would just do nothing but like eat meat? He went like on a meat only
I
diet.
did. I was listening to him on Rogan. Apparently he had some like autoimmune issues and they went away while he was on meat, but then he like had some other health issues later that maybe were caused by his meat diet. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he had a lot of shit go down. I mean, there's kind of like a reason why Jordan Peterson is not so much in the public eye anymore, but I definitely pegged him as like a pseudo scientist very early when he's talking about shit that's not like psychoanalysis or something like that. Like most of the time he's just talking pure crap.
It's definitely a weird cultural shift that happened in like the past 200 years. Whereas like in the mid 1800s, you probably had meat like a couple times a month. Like it was expensive. Like you got it from hunting or preserving it, and now, like you mostly don't consider it a meal unless there's a meat involved in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that can be also said two ways because like in back when we were mammoth hunters, you were probably eating meat every time you ate,
Most times, yeah, I'd say so.
and like
Yeah, it's hunter gatherer stuff.
yeah. So I mean there's two sides to the coin. I mean I think really honestly like just be conscious and try not to waste food, like, and I think that's really all we can do. I think as a society it's good to have the options, but I don't feel compelled to take advantage of them because I do love meat. Also, it's very good for my gym nutrition.
I also think that a lot of it is like if a lot of people want to make a difference, but a lot of people focus too much on individual, and it might just be like like we just like there are places that you have the option to be vegan, but there are places where you just don't have the option at all, and so sometimes like pushing for those changes is more effective than just being like upset at people who aren't like living the way that like you think they should, or and it's also like it's not like meat eating itself is a problem because if you're raising cows, you can take advantage of land areas that aren't so good for agriculture to also be able to produce food. So in some places that are like very mountainous, rocky with bad soils and things like that, like it's advantageous to have livestock. So it could be like a form of like cultural bias to be against it. But like the problem would definitely more be things like mass factory farms, like the detrimental environmental effects of having all that concentrated literal shit in one location, right?
Yeah, I would be entirely fine with the price of meat skyrocketing again and to get rid of factory farming because I think overall for our society that'll be better because number one, animals are not just packed in terribly inhumane conditions. Number two, our food. They're our food. We probably don't want to be eating gross factory food.
With antibiotics and all that shit.
Yeah, and that was the third point. They're using antibiotics, which are potentially creating super viruses, or not super viruses, super bacteria, super bugs to infect us, or our livestock. And I mean, imagine like an antibiotic-resistant strain of some like cow fever jumps to humans, COVID style, but it already has antibiotic resistance. So there's just no way to get rid of this bacteria.
To kind of shift topics, if Supreme released a steak tomorrow, how much do you think people would pay for it?
Thousands.
A shit ton. I mean, they would probably preserve it in like resin or something. Like,
have you guys heard of these the new crypto NFTs?
Oh yeah, the non-fungible tokens.
I think this is the dumbest idea.
Yeah, it's very dumb.
If you could kind of explain it to me, my understanding to it is like you kind of own the rights a little bit to what you're buying, like a digital piece of art.
Sort of,
like
but
you're
it's
collecting it.
Yeah, sort of. So it's like basically like you own the original. I don't know what that entails. Like you can buy like clips of NFL games now. I mean, not NFL, NBA games now. But I don't know what that really entails that you own the clip, because I'm pretty sure the NBA still owns the clip, but you own the right to the token version of the clip, which doesn't make any sense. People are like burning artwork so that their like digital NFT is now like the only way you can see the artwork, except for you can also just look at a picture of the artwork without paying for the NFT. I think the only way that these actually make sense is if you get some sort of good or service from owning it. Like maybe like imagine you own you own an NFT that gives you like a free Frosty every time you go through the Wendy's drive-thru.
I'm just not for it for environmental
we'll get one for Taco Bell, where if you buy the Taco Bell NFT, you get a $500 Taco Bell gift card.
Yeah, but what's the point of that? Because then how are you going to sell that NFT to anybody? You can't.
I think the point of the NFT is that we just figure out a way to make more shit run off of fossil fuels. Like when it comes to like Bitcoin and like the energy draw of that shit, like it's just like a different way of doing the same thing, which is now extending over to like the diseased ways that art markets work and art auctions and shit like that.
Well, yeah, Bitcoin is basically a plague because of the amount of electricity it uses to do basically nothing. Although there's something he said that the mining now is also distributing the ledger, I believe. So like it makes sense now, but in the early days of Bitcoin, people were just like running their electricity to mine as many coins as they could.
Well,
yeah, but
I mean, also
like...
that wouldn't be a problem if our grid was clean.
Well, yeah, if we were just using like solar panel stuff,
But always what's going to be better for the environment is like a lack of consumption. I feel like people's dream is that in some way we can do like carbon neutrality and like offsets and things like that. But honestly, I feel like we just need to prepare our society to just require less consumption, because because to a certain extent we mandate consumption to be able to like operate. Like people are too busy to be able to cook their own food, or they do not have like the option of places that serve like food to them via food deserts and things like that, or like they have to drive a vehicle. Everybody has to have their own personal vehicle because there isn't public transit or bike lanes or infrastructure set up, or like people have to do the consumption behavior because we just don't have the systems in place to make an alternative possible.
Yeah, I'm excited for like all the green energy things. Like we already have like hydroelectric power and stuff, and we have solar panels in certain places, but and like wind. But the problem with all of those green energy sources is if there's a disruption in that. Like hydroelectric, there's not ever a direct disruption. The water's always flowing. But like
unless there's like a drought or something.
Unless there's a drought, sure. But like sun is usually shining, but some days it's cloudy and there's not as much sunshine, or it's nighttime, so there's no power being generated. You know. And then,
yeah, but that's why you have like a diversity of options.
Or it's windy, and maybe it's not windy today, so there's no power being generated. But
it's really, we just need better batteries. Like we're still been stuck on lithium ions forever.
That's the thing. There's a bunch of companies that I've been looking at in my stock time investing that are like helping with the green. Like Tesla is helping with this, and then another company called Stem. They're like going public soon. They're through a SPAC, but anyways, they are like doing batteries, and they do it in California only right now, but they're like a pretty big company already, and they're just like they like hook up their battery to the energy grid to like store power, and then like during it also has like AI, so like it'll decide whether to use the battery power, or like it like routes the different energy sources whenever there's power draw. So like it's smart and intelligently is like, hey, we're experiencing peak load. We need to actually start using power from like the power plant instead of the green energy power, because we don't have enough.
Like, but I sometimes think that there's like this sort of like idea that petroleum or natural gas or things like that are inherently reliable when it comes to like the situation in Texas. Like it was the fossil fuels that have failed.
That's not
like,
what Fox told me.
Yeah, well, and we are gonna run out. And also, like, so if you can diversify and have like a multitude of different options, you can reduce the odds that like we would be in a situation where there is no wind and there is no sun, and for some reason people are using a lot of power. Like we can have like thorium nuclear reactors or something like that. I mean, I believe that we're gonna have to.
I think nuclear is pretty
transition.
safe. Nuclear is so reliable as long as you are safe with designing it, which all modern nuclear power plants are.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to see like people, like if you live in an area that's very sunny, just get solar panels on your house, and you can like you pay less on the electricity bill because your power goes back to the power grid.
I mean, already solar panels are like the best value. Really, like, they pay for themselves. It's almost irrational to not get one. If you're
I was gonna say, I heard an estimate that, I mean, this could be outdated, that if you covered just a quarter of the state of Arizona with solar panels, you could power the whole U.S.
Oh, probably. I mean, it's pretty sunny there.
We just need the political will. We honestly just need to make politicians afraid that they won't get reelected unless they do these things.
Well, the problem with that, though, is then you have to transport the power all the way to other states from Arizona, which I believe that there would be some issues with, like...
I mean, that's just an idea of the service area of the U.S. it would take. Like, think of, like, all the tops of buildings that no one uses.
Oh, yeah.
Or all the fucking parking lots. There's so much of the world just completely dedicated to fucking parking lots and parking spaces, and honestly, it'd be cool if it annoys me.
It'd be cool if we could, like, turn highways into, like, solar panels.
I remember the whole solar roadway thing, but, like, I think that if that technology is going to happen, it's going to be a long time in the future. Like, you have so many issues to work out with that.
Yeah, you could just put solar panels over the roadway. Like, people can put solar panels above parking spaces so that you provide shade for the cars underneath so that they don't overheat. Like, you can put solar panels above walkways in order to have something that shields people from the rain and also the hot sun. Like, there's so many other places you could put solar panels. But to be honest, I just think that specifically when it comes to America, we just make so much space for cars, and we design so much of our infrastructure around using a car. We have very few places where we have mixed zoning, where you have housing above businesses near restaurants and things within walking distance. That the only places where you can really live without a car is like college campuses, and like the places that you actually have a community when you walk outside your doors, like college campuses or really big cities. All right, like and so because of the way that we're so car centric, we have all these parking lots, we have all of these parking garages, we have all of these super highways that were built by like using eminent domain and tearing down black neighborhoods and cities, and they're poisoning us. They're using all these like materials to just have like a whole car for like a single person, and I just think that they were like the worst infrastructure mistake that we've ever made as a country.
Yeah, the sad part is we probably had better public transit before the introduction of cars. The lobbying, like streetcars were a thing.
But I mean, also, like, at that time, people were not thinking in the terms of, like, green energy at all. Like, we were just like, hey, everyone wants cars. Cars are cool.
Well, I mean, there's also the dark history of car companies buying public transportation companies.
The car companies were doing this, but green energy was not a factor. Like, people...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
No one fucking knew.
Yeah,
But
but
the
it's
car
definitely
companies
like
definitely were
I
like
don't. I also don't think
incentivized.
that people wanted cars. Like car companies wanted people to want cars. It was like a whole like, it, like right now people really would want a car, but that feels like a desire that's like coerced out of people because like our ticket into society is having like this $5,000 liability on your hands where you have to pay insurance and maintenance and all
I
this
mean,
other stuff.
if you want some culture shock as an American, jaywalking isn't a crime in pretty much any other country.
Oh yeah, no, and jaywalking was invented as like a anti-country person like racist thing to put the blame on the people walking on the road for being hit by cars. Like
Yeah.
before people would say, "Hey, we need to ban cars from entering the cities because they're going too fast and they're killing people who are walking on the road." The road used to be a shared space between people like on wagons and people who are walking and all sorts of stuff like that. And motorized cars were a fucking menace. But they decided to put stuff like manslaughter the vehicular manslaughter is a specifically different kind of manslaughter that gets less sentencing and shit like that. And then they try to put like more onus on the pedestrian for being hit than responsibility on the driver for hitting people. Like it's all like this crazy shit that we continue to do just to continue to have this car supremacy.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, at this point, it's just evolved to a consumption. Like everyone wants to buy new things constantly, and it doesn't matter who you are. You're probably buying new things pretty frequently, but it's a matter of like what you're buying and how much you're buying. Like,
yeah, it's just a car is a whole lot of shit to buy. It's a whole mass of
it's
metal
also
and rubber.
it's also very expensive.
Yeah,
Bad for your
and
wallet.
you have to go through like a salesman who has like an information disbalance with you and a whole financing system behind it. Like, oh, we finance 0% APR for like the first 6 months, and then it goes up to fucking 50% APR. I don't know. It's a scam basically. I think it's a way of getting you to like buy into this whole financial industrial production system that ultimately creates its own demand by putting obstacles in front of you and having you pay to jump over them, you know?
Yeah.
Also, I want to say, if I designed the driving test, like, Tennessee would have half as many drivers as they do right now, man. Like, people are terrible drivers around here.
This is why I'm ready for self-driving. People are bad drivers everywhere. Self-driving cars, I don't care about driving anymore. I don't want to drive. I would gladly just get in my car or some like communal car that comes and picks people up, like a communal Uber that's just self-driving. You just get in and it's just like, take me here. Sick.
Well, there's something like a self-driving car. It's a car that only has one driver.
Yeah, you're talking about the bus. And here's the thing: the problem with buses, Pablo, and I like buses. Sure, I like the I haven't ridden the light rail in Denver in a while, but I used to ride that to the airport and stuff whenever I would have to go, and also like whenever I went downtown from where I was living. But the problem with those are if you don't live in a specific location that is serviced by those buses or light rails, you cannot go to where you want to go. Also, you have to stick to their strict schedule of times, which for the light rail isn't that bad because they come like every 5 or 6 minutes. But and maybe like probably I think the longest you would ever have to wait is 15 minutes. But buses.
This is just a funding problem.
It is a
like
funding
in the U.S.
problem.
We're uniquely restricted in the range of buses and trains and trolleys.
For sure, it's a funding problem. We should definitely have more.
I mean, if we're being honest, the main problem is you have to intermingle with the masses, the pores, you know? They kind of smell.
I mean, I feel like this is like the big thing about cars is that they have made our society so stratified. They kind of like like the suburbs greatly contributed to car culture. And the suburbs were mostly just people wanting to like get away from black people. Like that was like the white flight, the blockbuster.
Urban people.
No, it was definitely racism that built the suburbs. And like they're the biggest racist monument we have. If you want to take down some racist monuments, take down the fucking suburbs. People started demonizing buses and things like that because like I think that a lot of people just don't want to live in a unified society because of their racism. Like so many people are against like funding of like buses or like public programs or like welfare and things like that because of the image that Reagan promoted of like the welfare queen,
Well, it's
like of Nixon promoted of all these other people.
it's also interesting because if you like ride the bus or like the train or you walk to work, you interact with a bunch of people that you wouldn't have had to interact with previously.
Yeah.
Even if you just got your headphones on, you're not paying attention to them. Like you're still interacting with them in some way. Like you look at them in the eye, and you're just like, "Hey, dog, we're on the same bus." But if you're in a car, you're isolating yourself from that. So I feel like after moving to the city, not that I live exactly downtown, but I feel a little bit more connected with like my fellow Denver residents because
Yeah, we need to have a community, live in a society, right? Like,
yeah.
Kind of related, but my greatest fear of being on public transport is I end up in some like YouTuber's prank video. It's not really a prank. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna pretend to rob each other point blank with a gun.
Oh my god. Like for that shit, like people just get used to it, like in the New York subways or something like that, or like people tend to like team up on the fucking dude who's jerking off, and they'll just start yelling at them and throwing shit at them. Or... Cut it out!
Did you guys see? I think it was just like a month ago here in Nashville. Like some guy got killed because he was doing a YouTube prank where he literally pretended to rob a guy who was not in on the prank. Walked up to him and said, "Give me all your money," with like a knife out. And the guy was like most Tennessee men, concealed carry, and pulled him out and shot him.
Jesus
I mean,
Christ,
look, if someone's holding a knife at me, that is like I'm scared, my dude.
Oh, no, I mean,
games
that guy
with
didn't get
stupid
charged of
prizes.
anything, obviously.
Yeah, man, that's nuts. But yeah, like yeah, I feel like cars just made us very disconnected from each other. We live in like a very lonely kind of
Yeah,
culture.
America, and I think the world in general, but specifically America, has definitely become far more lonely because it's more normal than ever to just be isolated. Like I'm just chilling in my apartment alone, you know. And like part of that's COVID, but also part of that's the fact that I'm like a working 24-year-old that I just live alone, you know. Whereas like in like older times, like like people aren't sitting at home watching Netflix. Like everyone's going out and everyone's going to do cool shit because otherwise, what are you doing? You're gonna read a book? Okay, nothing wrong with reading, but that's what you got.
Speaking of which, lonely 24-year-old, are we going to have the Into the Zeitgeist John Hardy 25th birthday special later this month?
Yeah.
Sure, but it won't be on my birthday because I am going to a cabin.
Nice.
But like, I really wish that we would return to having something like a public space. Like, like for many places it's like the downtown, but it's not like an area that you can just like go out and walk to. If I go out and walk outside, what I see is a road, and the parking lot to my place. Like there's no like modern day agora, right? Like the public space meeting location for like the neighborhood or something like that. And I just wish that more things would just be designed that way. Like if you walk out of student housing, like in my previous student housing, what you would see is a freaking park, a plaza. There would be like benches that could swing and two picnic tables that people could chill at. There would be like one tiny strip of road for cars to come in, and then past that would be like a little shop, offices, and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
You could realistically walk out and have a place where you meet with people.
That is something that I miss. I mean, I have some of that because I live in Denver, but that's something I miss from college. Like you could just walk outside a little bit from where we lived, and then you could just go chill on like the side of the like student center, basically.
Go down to the quad, bro.
Yeah, go to the quad, and like people are there, and then you're just like someone's probably playing frisbee. Someone's got like a rope in between two trees, and they're trying to balance on it.
I think we were practicing for Ultimate Frisbee, and there was always that one girl out there. Like, I guess she was practicing for her rave. She always had like
Hula hoops.
the glow stick hula hoops on.
There was that one guy. There was that one guy who had like glow hands, and he would like just be dancing in the cafeteria with his glow hands every day. And I will be honest, day one I saw this guy, I did not think he was very impressive. Day like 200 I saw this guy. This man's hands were lightning.
Yeah, he was practicing. He was
but,
developing skills. He was studying the gloves.
Yeah, he had rave gloves. Rave gloves that he just wore every day.
Well, not to be too much of a bummer, but we've been at this for over 2 hours, boys.
Yep, I think it's a good time to end, Alex. Thanks for
But
coming on.
I have one final rant. Please,
right.
one more Pablo rant. I really feel like the loneliness of American society has contributed a lot to our inability to be able to organize politics with each other and like engage in civic things. And a lot of like the modern day like diseased ideas that people have about like what life is in other places, you know, like you have like conservatives that think that like cities are freaking like crime spree when like crime is like lower than ever. Like now that like people are not there to observe society directly, they like depend on news outlets to be like told what society's like, and
yeah,
it
the
can
news
easily
outlets
be
are
lied
just
to.
24/7 news that just are like, hey, someone died, let's report on it.
Yeah, and if you're interacting it with society on a daily basis, like directly with the masses directly, then you know that shit's just not true, or like you at least have some personal experience with what the world is, or other people and people who are different than you are like.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyways, we're gonna let you go, Alex. Thanks for coming. Good talk. You're always welcome back.
Excellent. It was fun being here.
Friend of the show.
Yeah.
Maybe you can be part of our chat goblins next time. Thank you, Duncan and Chris, for being a source of some funny comments and inspiration for me a few times during the show. It meant a lot.
Send you my invoice right now.
Yeah, I'm paying Alex $100,000 for this episode, so. Yeah. So